Thank you so much, Logan, and good evening to everyone. We're very excited you chose to spend a few minutes with us this evening. I am Oz Hill, and I am the Deputy Superintendent of Operations for the School District of Philadelphia. Last week, we had 5 in-person community engagement sessions in different corners of the city as part of our ongoing facilities planning process. We also had sessions last night, this morning, and have 7 more in-person sessions scheduled over the next 2 weeks. There are 2 goals during these sessions. First, to let participants know about the facilities planning process and how we're making decisions about our schools. Secondly, to hear from participants about their schools and communities. We will continue to host these in-person sessions for the next 2 weeks and hope that you might be able to join us for an upcoming in-person session. This evening, you will get to observe a slightly modified version of these in-person sessions. To get us started, I'm going to give some quick background on the district's facilities planning process, and then we'll dive into a lively, moderated discussion with some members of our facilities project team. So let's dive right in. Like I mentioned, we will start with some introductions of our project team members joining us this evening, followed by a presentation, a deep dive on Learning Network 3, some live discussion, feedback from our participants, and then we'll close this session out. So with that, I will ask each of our 3 project team members to come off mute, share their name and role, and what they have found most interesting being a member of our project team. Let's start with Ms. Wallette Carter.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you this evening. I am with the Philadelphia Home and School Council, and what I've found interesting at attending some of these meetings is the fact that I am hearing from so many people from across the city and hearing what they're saying and what they're thinking, so that I have the opportunity when asked and go back to our meetings that I can also project what I'm hearing from the community, which is definitely very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Daniel DiMartino.
Hi, I'm Dan DiMartino. I'm a kindergarten teacher at the Shawmont School, and I found this process interesting because it's not, I have a voice for the teachers of Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, but I also get to see see it through a different lens from other stakeholders with it throughout the school district of Philadelphia. Thank you.
Last, but by no means least, I'd like to introduce Student Board of Education Representative, Mr. Charles Rinker.
Hello, everybody. My name is Charles Rinker. I'm a 17-year-old rising junior at Franklin Learning Center. And something that I found interesting throughout this whole process is the amount of options that we have with schools, whether that be co-location or repurposing.
Many thanks to all of our project team members who are joining us this evening. And now I have some brief slides to share, and then I'll look forward to our discussion and engagement throughout the session. I will begin with a brief review of the district's facilities planning process. Before we begin, I want to highlight that the purpose of this evening's session is to give you a preview into the content of our in-person sessions, which we hope you'll be able to participate in over the next week or so. We will not be answering detailed questions about the data during today's session. However, feel free to leave your thoughts in the chat. All of the panelists will be able to view the chat, and we will be sure to follow up on questions we do not answer during the session. Now, this is probably the most important slide of this entire presentation. At the top, you can see the problem the district is solving for. We recognize that we need to increase access to high quality academic and extracurricular programs across neighborhoods. But we know that the district has many aging and unequal facilities, and many are under-enrolled and over-enrolled. To solve for this problem, we have convened a large number of stakeholders to inform our planning. This includes a project team that's represented this evening, 9 advisory groups with more than 170 members, 33 listening sessions that were conducted last fall, and a survey that got more than 5,700 responses. Using feedback from this large array of voices, we have worked to develop 4 facilities decision-making categories, which we will explore more on a future slide. To more efficiently use our limited staff and facility resources, the superintendent will then consider this complex set of data using these 4 decision-making categories to recommend one of 5 options to the Board of Education to achieve the 6 desired outcomes you see around the wheel on the right side of this slide. Many of you have seen this wheel before, but it emphasizes the importance and the desire to have more rigorous academic offerings, more pre-K, more high-quality arts, music, and physical education programming, and many more things across all neighborhoods and schools in the district. Again, our goal through this process is to increase access for all students to these types of high-quality academic and extracurricular programming that you see listed on the wheel. The next slide provides more detail on each of the 4 data categories guiding this process. These categories include a school building score, which measures the conditions of school buildings. Things like, does the school have air conditioning? What are the conditions of the building systems to include plumbing and electrical systems? Secondly, a program alignment score, which measures how well the learning spaces in a school site support 6 specific types of programming. This score is not about the presence or quality of programming, but if the appropriate physical space exists to support the programming. Third, a capacity utilization score, which looks at how many students are in a building and measures whether the school site is over or under capacity. And finally, a neighborhood vulnerability score, which measures the extent to which schools, neighborhoods are experiencing social vulnerability and have experienced past school closures. I want to emphasize that this score in particular is reflective of what we have heard from our community during our listening sessions and in our advisories and among our project team members. We heard that we cannot make school decisions in isolation. We absolutely must consider the larger community that they sit within, and we have to acknowledge the impact of past school closures on communities. I'm sure there are questions about some of these data points. If you're able, again, I would encourage you to attend an in-person session, as those small group discussions are much more conducive to engaging with the data and asking nuanced questions about the process. The next slide further outlines our decision-making process. We developed this slide based on what we heard from our listening sessions, our advisories, and our project team. This is an equity-based process and is different from a traditional facilities planning process. For this reason, first, we start with the who on the left side of the column using our neighborhood vulnerability score. Then we consider the space using the capacity utilization score. Third, we look at the condition of the building using the school building and program alignment scores. And then finally, and importantly, we layer in additional nuance about the building, including anything not already captured in the data. This could be things like neighborhood dynamics, major roads not on our radar, program-specific considerations, and much more. I want to now take a brief moment to talk about the district's current grade band configurations. Through the facilities planning process, the district has reviewed its grade band configurations. Currently, the district has 13 different grade spans. This creates a number of school transitions for students, which can be disruptive to their learning experience. For example, on the screen, you can see that the district currently has one K2 school, a handful of K4 schools, and one third grade through fifth grade school. These transitions are even harder for special education students who might transition to different schools to receive the specialized services that they need. The next slide shows the 6 grade bands the district will be moving towards through this process. Reducing from 13 grade bands to 6 grade bands will allow district students to, at a minimum or at a maximum, transition between schools just twice during their K-12 educational journey. This creates more stability for students, staff, and school communities. This plan will also reduce the number of standalone middle schools because our detailed research indicates that students perform better with fewer transitions as they matriculate through their educational experience. We believe this simplified grade band structure will give our students more access and less transition, which will serve them much better in the long run. Now, with all of that background, let's move to previewing the activity taking place in our in-person sessions. This slide shows a sample data sheet for a learning network of 15 schools. Each school in the learning network is listed down the left-hand side of the sheet. To the right of each school are each of the 4 data points that I just discussed for each school. In a few moments, you will see how we are processing this data to inform possible facilities planning scenarios. What we then do with participants at our in-person sessions is chart on a grid all of the schools in the learning network. First, we start with the school's neighborhood vulnerability score, the WHO, and then its utilization score, which reflects the space. So for example, if a school had a low vulnerability score and a high utilization score, it would be plotted on the grid in the top left of the grid. Conversely, if a school had a high vulnerability score and a low utilization score, it would be plotted in the bottom right of the grid. Once we have plotted all the schools in the network, we begin to see patterns, clusters, and trends of schools that give us a starting point for conversation and decision making. This charting activity is the exact same activity our project team, 9 advisory groups, and members of the senior school district leadership team have engaged in during the planning process. The purpose of our July engagement sessions is for school community members, specifically students, families, staff, and the broader Philadelphia community, to begin to understand how we're making decisions and provide input before we begin to present school-specific scenarios by the end of the calendar year. The activities we do in our engagement sessions are hard to replicate virtually because they are fully interactive. But we're going to try to do our best to share what they look like in this virtual space. To give you a better picture of this activity, we're going to look at Learning Network 3 and what it looks like when it is fully charted. We have chosen Learning Network 3 only because it is a good example of a learning network with schools that are situated across the entire chart. If you come in to an in-person session, we are happy to show you and discuss the data for any learning network. But for today, we are going to focus on Learning Network 3 and two others as examples. For those who might be unfamiliar, I want to highlight that the district underwent a robust reorganization of its schools into 15 geographically based learning networks. This evening, we will look at learning networks that contain elementary and middle schools. However, and they say redundancy is the key to adult learning. If you come into an in-person session, we will have data and maps for all 15 learning networks, including our high school networks. Now, here's a map of Learning Network 3. This is an example of one of the printouts we have at our in-person engagement that participants use as they are engaging in our decision-making activity. As you can see in the bottom right in red, Learning Network 3 is in West Philadelphia. On the map above, you can see all 15 schools plotted just west of the Schuylkill. As I mentioned on the last slide, you will only see elementary and middle schools in this geographically based learning network. This is not a high school network, which is why you don't see any high schools mapped here. Here on this slide, you can see all 15 schools in Learning Network 3 plotted by the neighborhood vulnerability and their utilization. As I mentioned, we're using Learning Network 3 as an example, but at our in-person engagements, we are looking at all 15 learning networks in a similar way. If we were in person, I would now ask everyone at our table a series of questions. Our wonderful project team members who are joining us this evening will demonstrate with me what that would look like. At this time, I would like to take a moment to let our project team members chime in on what they notice about Learning Network 3 since they've done this charting activity themselves during their monthly meeting. I would also encourage our broader attendees to put anything in the chat that you notice. We will call out some of your comments also. I will start with Board Member Rinker. What do you notice about this learning network, sir?
I noticed that we have very few schools that have high utilization, but a lot are in a high vulnerability neighborhood. So that's something that really stands out to me as well. But we also have some outliers who are pretty low utilization and low neighborhood vulnerability. Sorry.
Thank you very much for that. Now I'll turn to Mr. DiMartino. Sir, what are your observations about this learning network?
I noticed that we have two schools that have high utilization scores, and they're on the lower to mid vulnerability area as well.
Thank you very much for those observations, sir. And Ms. Carter, any additional observations that have not been mentioned?
Sorry. Hi, as you said previously about the fact that no school, we want to make sure that no schools have been closed in that area because of the high vulnerability neighborhoods that are there. And also, we need to also look at the fact of, if you go refer back to the map, to consider the fact of this area in West Philadelphia, if you go back there, if you look up past Gompers in that big section right there, uh, has it been noted that they have just built 200 new homes in there? So that is something that we need to add to our little brain fix when we're starting to work with these schools.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carter, and thanks to all of our panelists. Those were great observations. I'll now turn to Logan Peterson, a member of our strategy team that's been integrally involved in this, and it's facilitating and monitoring the input and observations in the chat. Logan, are there any ideas in the chat that we haven't heard yet?
We don't have any comments in the chat, but we have 60 people or so in the room, so feel free to put some thoughts in and we'll call them out.
Thank you, Logan. I will now open it up to any project team member to answer or provide observations around what some of the challenges might be that we need to solve for in this particular learning network. Board Member Rinker, I'll start with you again, sir. What challenges might we be solving for in this learning network?
Some challenges that we might be solving for is maybe to alleviate some of the high utilization rates to the two schools at the top. We would have probably some issues, maybe moving some students outside of that school into a closer school due to most of the other schools being in neighborhoods with high vulnerability.
Thank you very much. That was great. Mr. DiMartino, what challenge do you see for this learning network?
I think one of the challenges definitely is going to be Charles was saying, we have a lot of schools that are in that that have higher vulnerability. So we have to be very cautious about any plans that we make for possibly, looking to relocate students to another school or even possibly, reconfiguring the schools. Like we talked about some of the grade spans, maybe looking at how the grade span is at school. So we need more information on some of these schools on what their grade span is. Where do they fit in those 13 different models? Where do these schools fit in that model? Maybe there's two schools that could basically go from maybe K to 4s to go into a K to 8 school, something to that extent. So we'd have to look at that data as well.
Thank you for that, Mr. DiMartino. Great. Ms. Carter, do you have any additional observations that have not been noted yet?
No, at this time, I will definitely say what Daniel said in reference to going into the fact that the grade levels, spans that we have that definitely need to be looked into. If we're going from 13 to 8, how will that affect the children?
Absolutely. Great observations. Thank you all. Logan, are there any ideas in the chat that we haven't heard yet?
Yeah, we have a few questions in the chat that we're responding to. Again, if you put a question in and we don't get to it, we'll be able to follow up after we have everyone's email. There was a comment or observation about this that I just wanted to highlight. When relocating high schools and middle schools, do we think about gang affiliations and the dangers that may affect students crossing certain neighborhood lines? That absolutely is something that we're looking at and thinking about. That would be that gray box on the right-hand side of the previous slide where we layer in that nuance or any details that might not be captured explicitly in the data. So thanks for that observation.
Thank you all.
And
These are the
Oz, can I just make just a quick comment about, because
Sure.
we went through this process, and one of the things that we discussed while we were going through this process was, and I think that people need to understand this, we had many conversations about the fact that outside of these just being data points on a chart, there's children behind this and there's teachers behind this that we need to take into consideration. And those inputs are going to be taken into consideration before anything is done. These are just conversations that we're having about this data and this information. I think people need to understand that too. You know what I mean?
Thank you very much. And that is a key point. Thank you very much for that, Daniel. Next, as a quick example, we're going to look at Learning Network 8. As you can see in the bottom right in green, This learning network is located primarily in North Philadelphia. Here on the next slide is the charted data for Learning Network 8. In this network, you can see almost all the schools clustered on the right-hand side of the chart, even though there continues to be a variety of under and over-utilized schools. This clustering on the right-hand side is actually because there isn't a single school in a low vulnerability neighborhood in this learning network. For our panelists or anyone in the chat, what are some of the challenges or considerations we may need to solve for based on this type of pattern?
I'm thinking of the fact that with all of these schools basically in a high vulnerable area, I definitely feel that the part where we are looking into making sure programs, after school programs, before school programs, pre-K, that those are actually put in to buildings that will sustain them and make the area a much more viable place for our children.
Thank you. Thank you. Great observation.
I definitely second that. I think it will definitely be important in this area to have more maybe events in these schools, or maybe have some more connection between staff members and teachers in the school with parents, so that they can kind of get a better understanding of what children in this neighborhood are going through, so they can be supported.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great observation. Daniel, is there anything that you've noted that hasn't already been covered?
I think the other two panelists covered basically what I was thinking as well.
Thank you. Now, let's take a really quick look at Learning Network 10. As you can see in the bottom right in blue, this learning network is located primarily in Northeast Philadelphia. On the map above, you can see all 15 schools plotted on the left side of the Northeast. This learning network has a slightly different problem as we look at how it's plotted that we're solving for. While the schools range from low to high vulnerability, there is not a single school on the bottom half, meaning none of these schools are below 50% utilization of their building capacity. In fact, over half the schools in this learning network are over-enrolled. In short, our problem to solve for in this learning network is that we have a wide range of over-enrolled schools, but we do not have any nearby under-enrolled schools to absorb those students that are in over-enrolled situations. For our panelists or anyone in the chat, what are some of the challenges or considerations we may need to solve for based on this type of pattern?
I'm thinking of the fact that maybe with we don't have very many that are truly into the high vulnerable neighborhoods. Maybe these are schools that we need to look at grade configurations with more so. If they're overutilized, if we move certain grades to another school and move other grades to another school, maybe this could possibly alleviate some of the high utilization of these schools and even it out. So grade configuration, I think, would help out a little bit in some of these schools.
Thank you. Are there any other observations? We wanted to share 3 different learning networks to show how varied the challenges are across the district, and to make clear that we're committed to a thoughtful, comprehensive approach to solving the challenges. Our goal is to ensure every neighborhood has access to strong academic and extracurricular programs, while also addressing disparities in enrollment and facility conditions that leave some schools overcrowded and others underutilized.
I will chime in real quick, Oz. Sorry, I was catching up on the chat there. There's just 4 quick points that I wanted to call out. There was a note, I believe it was on Learning Network 3. Someone in the room had the experience that just because new homes are opening doesn't necessarily mean that there will be students in those homes and that those young people would go to our schools. Certainly a possibility. There was a comment on, I believe, Learning Network 8 about there being a large number of English language learning students. So that is good context for us to have and to keep top of mind. Question about whether co-locating schools increases outcomes for students or is more of a cost-saving measure. Our goal through this process, as Deputy Superintendent Hill noted at the top, that wheel with the 6 desired outcomes, our hope is that kids get more access to programming out of this process, not less. We are not leading with cost savings here. And then there's a question about how community feedback will be considered. That's why we're here right now. That's why we have 7 sessions left. We take notes at every meeting that we have with feedback we hear from the community, and it's going to go right into our decision making. So thank you for those notes and for your questions, some of which we're responding to and some of which we will get back to you on. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Logan. As I shared at the beginning, the goals of these sessions are to share information about this process and, very importantly, to hear from participants. At in-person sessions, we have note takers capturing all of the feedback and comments our participants share. Before we close, we'd like to give the same opportunity to everyone attending today or this evening. The QR code on the screen will bring you to a brief Google form. This is the same note catcher that we use at all of our in-person engagement sessions. Please take a moment to share information about your school or larger neighborhood. What challenges, opportunities, or dynamics in your neighborhood are important for us to consider as we continue along in this process. I'm going to pause for about 2 minutes for you to complete the form and provide the feedback. As you are wrapping up your feedback, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to provide responses. Also, as we close, I want to thank all of you for attending this evening and logging into today's session. I also want to thank each of our panelists, project team members for taking the time to be with us this evening. We are incredibly fortunate and grateful for your commitment to this important project and for your service to the school district of Philadelphia and the families, students, and communities that we serve. Translating the charting activity into a virtual format is quite challenging, but we hope this session gave you a sense of how the project team, school district, and other groups are starting to think about the kinds of decisions that may be possible for our school facilities. If you can make it out to an in-person session, we hope you do. We'd love to see you there. We look forward to seeing you at one of the 7 sessions that we still have planned. If you cannot, we hope you stay engaged in this process, as there will be more opportunities to engage in the months to come. Again, thank you, thank you, thank you for attending, and we hope you have a great rest of your week.